So Razor's Reign is up and running. The All Black squad to take on England has been released, and that's what we're talking about in this video. I think there's a few different things to go through. I'm not going to go through it position by position. I'd imagine by now a lot of you would have seen the full team and digested it. Here it is just for your reference in case you haven't. There's some interesting stuff in there. There's some new guys in camp, but I think one of the most important things when looking at this squad and when talking about this squad and reflecting upon it is something that Razor said at the press conference, where he said, this is a squad, this is a team to beat England. I think sometimes, particularly when it's the first team and the first squad of a World Cup cycle, you're looking 4 years down the line, you're looking at the rotation in the team. This is a team for the here and now as well. So whilst there are some new faces in there and whilst there are some maybe surprising selection decisions, I think what he and his coaches have done is pick the best strength team that they think will get the job done against England in the couple of tests that are coming up in not too long, not this weekend, the weekend after. England have just had a game against Japan. They are now in New Zealand and we start building up to that series, which I think it's quite a fascinating series for a few reasons. From the All Blacks perspective, it's a new era, right? It's a new coach who's incredibly popular. His record speaks for itself in terms of what he's done with the Crusaders, but naturally it means that there's some uncertainty of what this New Zealand team are going to look like. I think they'll be incredibly strong, but I think they'll be quite different as well in terms of how they approach the game. And then from an England point of view, it's a team who have maybe turned a corner. The last couple of games of the Six Nations, with the win against Ireland, almost beating France away from home, and the win against Japan was relatively routine. There weren't too many surprises there, but they feel like they're on a team that are maybe on the right track, but they face one hell of a challenge in facing this New Zealand team. So it's a team to beat England. There are some surprises in there. I think Hoskins Sotutu is the one on a lot of people's lips of why he hasn't been selected, but I still feel like because he has made the point of saying this is the squad to beat England, I get the impression that there will be chopping and changing throughout the year for the All Blacks. I think players will come in and get other opportunities, of which Hoskins Sotutu, I would expect, could well be one of those. I don't think this is necessarily exactly what this squad is going to look like by the time we say get to the end of the year and when the All Blacks come up and tour this part of the world. In terms of one of the main headlines as well was the captaincy. It's been up for debate for a while. Would it be Scott Barrett? Would it be Ardie Savea? And it is Scott Barrett that he has gone with. Plenty of people, I'd imagine, would have wanted it to be Ardie Savea. I was quite torn on this, looking ahead to it, because on the one hand, I thought Ardie Savea is so good. He's the first name on the team sheet. He has been... when that New Zealand team weren't playing well, he almost single-handedly was dragging them up to his level. Even when they weren't playing well, he was exceptional. But I just wondered whether you let him do his thing. He's going to be a vice-captain in this. And actually, Scott Barrett, and I think Scott Barrett's performances and how good he was kind of last year in getting the All Blacks, or in the All Blacks reaching a World Cup final, and his contribution to that cause was utterly exceptional. He was brilliant in that massive quarter-final against Ireland. So I don't really have much of a problem with it. In fact, I think either of those players you could have selected would have been pretty good selections. And I think Scott Barrett, over the last probably 18 months or so, his game, from my perspective, obviously watching from afar, has gone to another level. So they know each other well from the Crusaders. He is going to be the captain. As I say, I'm not going to go through it absolutely position by position and name by name. I've seen quite a few other people on YouTube have already done that, so no doubt you will search them out. But I think there are a couple of things in particular to point out and that I found particularly interesting, in particular when we're looking at this series coming up against England. And one of those is up front. Because if you're comparing England and you're comparing the All Blacks, I think that front row is one of the areas that you would say New Zealand have a real edge at the moment. Something that's been spoken about quite a lot up here in England about the development and rotation of the front row. It's probably somewhere where they're a little bit behind in their development with where they would want to be. Dan Cole, Joe Marler still there. I think England's front row options are decent. I just feel like the All Blacks have some really good options in there and was such a key part of them reaching that World Cup final. That improvement in the front five for the All Blacks was massive for them. It was a game changer, really, I think, in where they were to the point where they end up losing a World Cup final by just a single point, and even looking at it and feeling that they maybe on another day could have, should have won it. So I think front row for this series coming up is pretty fascinating, actually. The other one is fly half, because you've got the three players there where it's fly half or 15. So Beauden Barrett, Damien McKenzie or Perafita. Like, who's going to start? I'm actually going to put up who I think the 15 could be at the end of this video, but is it going to be, say, Barrett at fly half, Mackenzie at fullback? Quite what they do in those positions, and it's fairly interchangeable, I suppose, but I think that is something that I find quite fascinating to see exactly what they try and do. And then linking it with fly half, the halfbacks. No Cam Roygaard, I think, is a real shame. I loved kind of the trajectory that he was on. I felt like he was going to be the next player to be the starting 9 with Aaron Smith retiring. He's injured, so not available for selection. But the return of TJ Perenara, that's a great story. Always seems like such a good bloke, has been out with injuries, his form dropped off, but he's got himself back into that All Blacks environment. And yeah, I'm pretty delighted for him in all honesty. But I said how I was going to kind of flash up the 15 that I might be tempted to select. The point of this actually is, despite the fact that they've lost Brodie Retallick and Sam Whitelock, Sam Cane isn't there because of injury, Aaron Smith has obviously departed, there's no Richie Mwanga, there are big names missing from this All Black squad. I still feel like the 15 you could almost write now for that test against England. I think they're in a kind of strange position where it's a new era, they've had big changes in that team, but it still feels very stable. And it still feels packed full of quality. These were the names that I just jotted down. Now, you might disagree with me, in which case you can put it in the comment section. But I think, broadly speaking, the front row, you probably know the direction they're going to go. I mean, that was the front row that started the World Cup final. I know it was a little while ago now. We've had a whole Super Rugby campaign, so maybe form, and there might be some changes in there. But I don't think it's ridiculous to suggest that that could be the starting 3. Barrett as captain will be in the second row. All right, he might wear the 5 jersey. So who comes in? Is it going to be Tupu Vai? Is he going to be the other second row? That was maybe a question mark. I think 6 is a question mark, but the rest of the back row with Papali'i and Surveyor are nailed on. I think Christie will be the 9. I've put Barrett at 10, but it could be Mackenzie. But either way, I think at the moment I get the impression both of those players start. So even if it's Barrett 15 and Mackenzie at 10, then Geordie Barrett and Ioane in the centres. Talea will start on a wing, and then who's the other wing? So for me, it feels like quite a steady squad, quite a solid squad, a very strong squad actually, and quite smart as well. Even though it's a new era, and there will be players that come in, and you know, the new caps in there, Super Rugby form will be taken into account. I just wonder actually whether it's, despite everything, despite the changes, it's quite a stable All Blacks environment. It's a team that, given the fact they don't have much preparation ahead of that test series with England, are going to be relying on a lot of the guys that have been there and done it already. And actually, if that gives them a pretty good place heading into this series, it puts them in a pretty good place, I would suspect. I could be completely wrong. That was my impressions. And obviously, I watch more of the Gallagher Premiership, the URC, kind of the Northern Hemisphere club game, try and watch Super Rugby, but the timings make it difficult. So you can let me know if I'm missing anything very obviously you think, put it in the comment section. But for me, yeah, this New Zealand team that is a new era, it's fresh, but also it's a bit more of the same, possibly. Maybe the big difference actually is going to be their approach to the game and the style of game plan we see implemented rather than the actual names on the team sheet. That's perhaps going to be the more fascinating element of this. I'll leave it there. Let me know. What do you think of it? What do you think of this team? What do you think of, I don't know, just everything you're seeing from Scott Robertson at the moment? Very different character to Ian Foster, isn't he? But I think it's a really exciting time for New Zealand. I'm intrigued to see what they look like in this series against England. I think, from an English perspective, I think it's going to be a pretty tall order to win either one of these 2 test matches. But yeah, it's going to be exciting. So comment down below, like the video, and also, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Would appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one.